Camping has always been my way of escaping the monotony of my small town. On one of my usual solo trips, I headed to a familiar part of the forest near my city. It's a small city with not much to do, so camping is one thing I really enjoy. I'm not big on hiking though. I prefer the more relaxing aspects of camping, like sitting by a fire and having no responsibilities. The trail I went on was one I had been to plenty of times. It was only a 30-minute walk from the parking area, and the campsite was right by a lake. Given the size of my city, there are not many people who could be camping at the same time in the place as I was. But this time, when I got there, a man had a tent already set up. I could see him down by the lake, walking in the sand. He looked to be in his 40s, wearing generic swimming shorts and stained white t-shirt. I walked a little further from where his tent was and set up mine. I then collected some large stones from nearby and placed them in a ring, prepping for the campfire I was going to have later. As I did, I noticed the man looking at me. Not just a glance, but standing down by the lake with his body turned completely toward me, watching. I tried to ignore it, but every time I looked back, he was in the same spot, still staring. It got really creepy, to be honest. So I waved at him to see if he wanted to say hi or something. After I waved, he turned around and continued walking along the lake. Whatever that was, it gave me a really uncomfortable feeling. For the next 20 minutes, I kept an eye on him until he walked away from the lake and into the forest behind his tent. I thought there might be a trail back there, or maybe he was just walking around. Either way, I was glad he was gone for now. I relaxed by the lake for an hour or so before moving my chair back to my tent. As the sun was setting, I lit my campfire and noticed a shape next to a tree far out in the forest. It was that guy again, just standing there and staring at me. This was really creepy. How long had he been watching me? I moved my chair to face him, keeping an eye on him. He stayed there for a good 30 or 40 minutes, just standing and watching me, before it got too dark to see him anymore. The shadows of the tree made it hard to see, and after a while I couldn't make out his shape at all. I knew he could still see me, though with my campfire lighting up my sight. The thought of him still out there, staring at me, made me really anxious. I debated packing up and leaving, but worried he might follow me out, so I stayed awake, tending the fire and waiting. Several long, tiring hours passed, and I didn't see him again. He never came back to his tent or came close enough for me to see him. I had this constant feeling of being watched, though, and it kept me on edge. Every little sound from the forest seemed amplified, making my heart race. Just when I thought I could maybe get a bit of sleep, I heard a rustling noise from the direction of the man's tent. My heart pounded as I strained my eyes to see in the dark. Suddenly I saw a flicker of light. He had lit a small fire and was sitting by it, still facing my direction. The firelight illuminated his face just enough for me to see that he was staring directly at me. The intensity of his gaze made my skin crawl. I decided I couldn't stay any longer. Quietly, I began packing up my gear, trying to make as little noise as possible. As I stuffed my sleeping bag into my backpack, I glanced over at him again. He had not moved. His eyes were still fixed on me. I could feel his gaze following my every movement. The whole situation felt surreal and terrifying. As soon as I had everything packed, I doused my campfire and headed toward the trail, keeping my flashlight off to avoid drawing attention. I walked quickly but cautiously, the crunch of leaves and snap of twigs underfoot sounding deafening in the silence. I constantly glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see him following me. The trail felt much longer in the dark, and every rustle in the bushes made me jump. I was on high alert, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I reached parking area. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking, and got into my car. As I started the engine, I saw movement at the edge of the forest. The man was standing there watching me, and I didn't wait to see what he would do. I sped away, my heart racing. Back in the safety of my house, I couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on me. I double-checked all my locks and windows, irrationally fearing that he had followed me back. Even now, I can't forget that night. It's the kind of experience that makes you question going out alone ever again.